good day to members of the media and the listening public. The public is aware of challenges facing many hard-working Bermudians who struggle daily to ensure the family's basic needs are met. With this in mind, this government is confident that as we move towards establishing a minimum wage in alignment with a living wage regime, it will improve the lives of many by ensuring that they receive fair and just wages, allowing individuals and their families to cover their basic needs. I am pleased to announce that we are one step closer to that goal. To that end, the Wage Commission was established by the Employment Act 2019 as a result of a Parliamentary Joint Select Committee on the establishment of a living and minimum wage regime. Its function is to conduct such studies, reviews, and analysis as necessary and make recommendations on the minimum hourly wage and the living wage rates to be prescribed by the Minister of Labour. The Commission, which functions as an independent authority, is chaired by Mr. Cordell Riley and consists of 8 members, including ex officio representatives from the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Labour. On behalf of the Ministry of Labour, I give my sincere thanks to the Wage Commission for completing and delivering to the government the first report that provides recommendations on the establishment of a minimum wage in alignment with their responsibilities as set out in Part 3 of the Employment Wage Commission Act 2019. At this time, I welcome Mr. Riley to say a few words and speak to the document's findings.
Thank you, Mr. Hayward, and good morning, Bermuda. The Commission began its work in earnest last February in establishing a minimum wage in the first instance, and secondly, a livable wage for Bermuda. At the onset, the coronavirus pandemic was unfolding. Its devastating effects have been laid bare. While some may have considered this an inappropriate time to introduce a minimum wage, that was not the position taken by The Economist magazine in its March 2021 edition. They felt that the one lesson that Western governments should have learned coming out of this pandemic is the need to top up the wages of lower income workers. Bermuda can also learn from that lesson. Most modern developed countries have a minimum or living wage regime. More than 90% of countries designated as International Labour Organization member states currently have a statutory wage regime of some sort. Many evidence-based documents have outlined that many benefits realized by employers and employees in countries where a minimum or living wage has been instituted. Among the more developed nations of the world, Bermuda is among the few that does not have a minimum wage, and the goal is to remove us from this list. According to some reports, studying the impact of minimum wages on economies is the most researched topic in all economics. No matter what side of the debate you are on, you will find many studies to support your viewpoint. The Commission remained focused on its task of recommending a minimum wage for Bermuda with the knowledge that a minimum wage will assist in the following: promoting fair compensation for employees, improving an individual's quality of life, preventing further exploitation of workers, preventing working families that are below the poverty line from receiving what many would consider unlivable wages, and improving the purchasing power of individuals. One of the working definitions of poverty related to wages is that a person is considered to be in poverty if they earn less than half the median wage rate. It is deemed unconscionable that this is the case in an affluent country like Bermuda. It is therefore essential that an appropriate minimum wage be established. When making recommendations for a living wage, which the legislation defines as the income necessary for an employee and their household to enjoy a socially acceptable standard of living, the Commission will consider essential costs such as food, housing, clothing, medical needs, childcare, and transportation. One of the lessons learned, as mentioned earlier, from other countries during this pandemic was the need to top up the lowest paid workers' wages in this community. With the establishment of a minimum and livable wage, Bermuda can benefit from the lessons learned from other countries. The Commission reviewed a sample of countries to understand the range of minimum wages applied. I must note that Switzerland had the highest minimum wage at $24.76 in Bermuda dollars, while Turks and Caicos had the lowest at $6.25. However, when comparing the cost of living of those countries sampled to Bermuda's, all had a lower cost than Bermuda. In addition to the low income thresholds report conducted by the Department of Statistics and the Joint Selection Report of Parliament, the Commission relied heavily on reports produced by the ILO, particularly its Minimum Wage Systems Report of 2014. The Joint Select Report recommended, as some of the ILO member states using or applying a fixed percentage of the median wage. As opposed to the average, the median income is frequently used as it avoids the highs or extreme lows, which does not distort the median wage. Having concluded the first report, the Commission recommended 3 options for a minimum wage depending on what is expected to be achieved. Option 1, a minimum wage of $13.20, which is 42% of the median hourly wage in 2019, and due to no increases in inflation likely, it's going to be the same as in 2020. This is the wage floor option, which many employers in the target sector, such as the hospitality sector, indicating that they can already meet this level. Option 2, a minimum wage of $15.75, which is 50% of the median hourly wage. This option is at the poverty level threshold, thus setting a wage level that is not below the poverty level. This provides workers with greater wage dignity and begins taking those at the lower end out of poverty. The rate would be a stretch for some employers, but early indications are that most will be able to make that stretch. And option 3, a minimum wage of $17.30, which is 55% of the median hourly wage. At this level, the wage is set at the lower bounds of a livable wage. A minimum wage at this level would pave the way for the transition to a livable wage. However, some feedback received by the Commission was that some employers would have to take measures to achieve this wage, while others indicated that they may have to close their doors altogether. Thank you.
Again, the government thanks the Commission for the work it has done thus far and will await receipt of the Commission's second report on a living wage, after which the government will review the recommendations and considerations contained in the reports with an aim to table in Parliament a wage bill that will establish a statutory minimum wage in alignment with a living wage regime. In closing, I would like to remind everyone that each of us have a role to play in stopping the spread of the coronavirus, following public health guidelines, wearing a mask, practicing good hand sanitation, and maintaining physical distance. Do the research, talk with your doctor, and make an informed decision regarding vaccinations. Thank you. At this time, I'll take questions from the media.
Good day, Minister. Mr. Riley alluded to this subject in his remarks. So I'm wondering, what would your message be to business owners watching this, hearing this, who might complain that their businesses are already hemorrhaging money or barely in operation due to the pandemic and restrictions, who will say now they have to, or at some point in the future, they might have to set aside more money for payroll on top of everything?
So certainly there will be a level of consultation between the recommendations being provided by the Commission and the government implementing a wage act in front of Parliament. But we should be clear that it's the aim to ensure that workers receive fair and just wages within our society. And the government is steadfast on ensuring that we improve the life of workers in this country.
Thank you, Minister.
Morning, Minister. Mr. Riley.
Good morning.
Mr. Riley, if I could start with you.
Sure.
Was the Commission able to establish or have any idea of how many people are actually living in poverty in Bermuda at the moment?
Well, based on the data coming from the Department of Statistics, we estimate that approximately 15% of the current workforce will fall into that category.
Right.
It's about 5,000 individuals.
Okay. And Minister, any idea of the timeline for this?
Well, certainly, as indicated in my remarks, we're going to wait for the Commission to provide the second report on a living wage. Certainly, it would be best practice for us to have continuity between the minimum wage report and the living wage report, so that we're not duplicating the exercise over when we receive the second report.
But do you know when that second report might be received?
Mr. Riley?
Well, we have given an undertaking to the minister because the legislation says from 1 year after the implementation. So now that they received it, so 1 year. So we're looking at March of next year, if not sooner. But we are certainly working on that now. But certainly, we've indicated no later than March of next year.
Right. Okay. Minister, have you got the latest unemployment stats figures? We haven't seemed to have had some for quite a while. Do you know if some are going to be released soon? Can we expect them soon?
I do know that what we are currently aiming to do is we're in discussions with the minister responsible for the cabinet to see if another labor force survey can be conducted in short order so we have more accurate numbers regarding unemployment stats. At this moment, we use data regarding those persons who are either applying for short-term unemployment benefits or those persons who have signed up for financial assistance or the supplemental unemployment benefit. It gives us a gauge in terms of where employment is trending, but it doesn't give us an accurate figure as a survey would.
On the subject of financial assistance, you mentioned it's about 2 weeks ago you gave a statement. You were concerned about landlords were turning away people who weren't on financial assistance, and you gave assurances that financial assistance was being paid out on time. Is that still the case? Because we've heard stories from various people who are saying that they haven't received it or it's taking weeks to get. Are you confident that the system is working and that payments are being made efficiently?
Yes, certainly. I'm confident that the financial assistance has the ability to pay homeowners and landlords on time. The outreach was because what we've seen is more of a discriminatory trend against persons who are on financial assistance. And so there was 3 parts to the statement. One was the outreach to homeowners to be a bit empathetic in these times. Number 2 was an outreach to families of individuals who want financial assistance to see if the families have the means to take in some of these individuals. And number 3 was directly to clients of financial assistance to ask them to respect individuals' properties once being placed in those locations. And so it's a serious problem. And if we, because of our shortage of public housing, once persons are removed from private dwellings, it leads to a level of homelessness. Most of those individuals have children, and that's not a predicament I would like to see Bermudians in.
And one final question on a completely different subject, I hope you don't mind, but I have to ask it while I have the opportunity. 2 weeks ago there was a bus dispute, and it went to arbitration. Is there any development on that?
It is my understanding that the parties have settled that dispute before it went to the tribunal.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, Riley.
Good afternoon, Maya Palacio here from Media Maya. My first question actually is, do we have a number figure for what the living wages will be here in Bermuda? Like, any idea?
Sorry, do we have?
You said for minimum wage, sorry. What is the number figure? Is there one that's already been thought of?
Yeah, we gave out 3, 13.20, 15.75, and 17.30. Those are the options the commission recommended.
Okay, so what is the difference between the 3? Like, which one are you guys leaning toward the most, and why those numbers?
Well, we're not leaning toward anyone in particular. When we research this, it all depends on what the philosophy of the government is. So if we wanted to establish a wage floor, you can go with the lower one. If you want to top up the people, there's a certain level of, I guess in our discussions, the optics of recommending a minimum wage that's lower than the poverty level. There was just something that didn't set well in a country such as Bermuda. And then we offered the higher one at 17.30, which is slightly above the poverty level. So, and thinking of a living wage regime, knowing that this is where we're going to next, we've sort of given those three options, so the government has some options to deal with as we go forward. And as the minister just mentioned, that we should be looking at the two in tandem. In fact, I can tell you that part of my deliberations, I met with one of the experts in this field, Martha and Richard Anchor, who developed the Anchor method for a living wage, and they, excuse me, and they indicated to me that countries which set a very low minimum wage have difficulty moving that to a livable wage if they are planning to have a living wage. And I also sit in the Global Living Wage Committee, and the countries in that committee are having the same challenges by once you set a living wage and you're trying to move forward. So I think the minister is absolutely correct that we keep our eye on both balls while we're moving in that direction. So that's why we initially gave sort of options for the minister to consider, or the government to consider.
Thank you. And my question, with those three numbers that you stated, those do take into account deductions as well when people get paid?
Do they take? No. So a minimum wage is the philosophy that we use. It was a wage floor. In other words, you can't pay below that. So deductions will come out. I think for some at the lower end, there are very little in terms of payroll deductions. I think you still have health deductions, etc. But I think payrolls, I think under 48,000, I think, Minister, I think it's like 2% or something like that. So there's very low deductions right now for individuals who are earning in that area.
Okay. My next question for you, Minister, this actually goes into accordance with kind of pay equity. I remember the last thing that I've asked you about pay equity in Bermuda, you said the labor team is currently in research and agenda setting phase in regards to assessing pay equity in Bermuda. How is that going so far with that team?
We are certainly progressing with our findings. There is two things when it comes to pay equity. There's equal work for equal value, and then there's pay equity as it pertains to female-dominated jobs versus male-dominated jobs. That requires a lot more work, and so you don't have much countries who have moved forward with genuine pay equity legislation. But what you do find in legislation worldwide is equal pay for equal value work. For most unionized employment establishment, this is not a problem, but certainly for private sector. And what we're currently doing is jurisdictional reviews to see where the best practices are and how we can proceed with this particular matter. But this is certainly something that I, as the Minister of Labour, certainly support is closing that gender gap.
Thank you very much. And my last question could either go to both of you, but it has to do with, let's say the minimum wage is put in place. Is there a possibility that employers can, pay that minimum, even though they can pay more, that they will, use that as an excuse to just pay the minimum?
And so what we don't want to see is employers trying to adjust their wages downwards to meet minimum wage rates. And we will ensure that moving forward, we put some protections in place to protect the current contracts of employees so that that does not occur. But that will come out in the Wage Act, and we will also have individuals responsible for ensuring that there is compliance with the Wage Act that individual employees can actually report to. Okay.
And my final side is just for the public, anyone that's listening, if they are having issues getting their unemployment benefits, let's say incorrect card number or don't have the right email and people can't contact them, who do they contact to fix that issue?
They have to contact the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance is administering the unemployment benefits. The Ministry of Labour, through the Department of Financial Assistance, is administering the supplemental unemployment benefits and any FA benefits.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members of the media. Do we have any further questions? All right, thank you all, and have a great day.
We're gonna have,